I am a liberal feminist. I helped co-found the Muslim Reform Movement because I oppose the sexism and intolerance and extremism within the orthodoxy. So after the 9/11 attacks, I was fighting Islamism, this phenomenon of political Islam in the world. So for 20 years, chasing terrorists. And then over the last year, little did I know that I would become this accidental activist on the issues of education. But what happened is that in June 2020, after the tragedy of George Floyd's killing, the school principal at my son's high school sent an email to the moms and dads and kids at our school. And she said that we needed to check our privileges. And I thought, do you even know us?
When we talk about parents mobilizing against critical race theory, which is really this central ideology that's being taught in schools that you have such a huge issue with, what do we actually mean? What is critical race theory? And how does it affect the education of young people like your son, who was a senior in high school at the time of George Floyd's death?
We now have this notion that we have to look at, that it is critical to look at America and the world through the lens of race. We now have that translated into books like this one. This becomes this in our school system. This idea is presented to the young child. Whiteness is a bad deal, simply put. And then this illustration that you have a contract binding you to whiteness. You get stolen land, stolen riches, special favors. Whiteness gets to mess endlessly with the lives of your friends, neighbors, loved ones, and all fellow humans of color. Imagine now we are pitting a child as an enemy of their neighbor and even friend.
To me, this sounds quite religious. So it's sounding a little bit like original sin. How does your understanding of religion play into this idea of critical race theory?
Yeah, I was raised Muslim, and so the concept of original sin is not one in which we're born, but it is one that I know, defines so much of Christian thought. And this idea is very much one of original sin, that you are born with the sin of the race into which you are born. But the problem is, with this religion of wokeism, there is no forgiveness. There is no redemption. You must bend your knee to the idea that you are forever then the oppressor. And that is a heavy, heavy burden to put on any child. And so, the mama bear in me, it just says that this is child abuse.
When you protested the school board initially in 2020, you were dubbed a domestic terrorist, along with the other parents who were resisting critical race theory in Virginia schools. Why was that? And what does that actually mean?
So I went before my school board in June 2020. And we, as immigrants and parents of color, went before the school board that was now talking about anti-racism in our schools. They spent $20,000 for 1 hour with one of the architects of this anti-racism, a man by the name of Ibram X. Kendi. And for months and months before we were smeared as domestic terrorists, we were simply ignored. But we kept going. And the reason why the National School Board Association sent this letter as SOS to President Biden was because we weren't shutting up. So now they needed to silence us. But I just want to add one other element that's really important. There is a big business that is being supported by school board decisions and school district officials. It's a big business that is being that emerged over the last decade by big tech. And I only knew about this because our school district signed an agreement in September of this year with one of those companies. And that company is called Panorama Education. So what they did is that they used the social justice issues as a Trojan horse then to bring in something that they call screeners. And in these screeners, they ask kids questions like, do you feel loved? Do you feel suicidal? Are you non-binary, LGBTQ, transgender, gender fluid? And then they ask other questions like, do you feel like your race is represented in the school? So what has happened is that this company, for example, has gotten contracts with school districts all across America. And one of the investors is Mark Zuckerberg. What they do is then use the data to create algorithms on our kids and literally put them into a program that they called an early warning system. And in this early warning system, they then grade the kid as red, green, or yellow. And red means that the kid's is having problems and needs intervention. This is multi-million-dollar industry. And the person who wrote the letter that turned the FBI on parents was Attorney General Merrick Garland. We discovered that his son-in-law is one of the co-founders of this company, Panorama Education. And I just want to make sure that we talk about that element, because what has happened is that we have money and politics now intervening to have surveillance on our kids and to intervene in our kids' lives. And that's when it became really serious.
How did the pandemic play into this narrative of the increase in critical race theory being taught in schools, and also in your fears around the school system in Virginia? How did the pandemic affect this?
With the pandemic, one serious issue was that school boards weren't dealing effectively with the crisis that we had of kids at home, and they were not managing well the idea of returning to school. So that was one big issue. Then secondly, what they did is, instead of focusing on this really important issue of how to get our kids back to school, they became social justice warriors. And so, like I mentioned, our school district, Fairfax County Public Schools, spent $20,000 to bring in this anti-racist, profit, when in fact we needed them to get our kids back to school. And what they started doing is they started spending money on these programs, these trainings. They hired these, quote, diversity officers and brought in diversity consultants. I ended up helping create an organization called Parents Defending Education earlier this year. And one of my first tasks was to follow the money. And what happened, we started to see, is these big companies that are essentially government contractors ended up getting millions of dollars of contracts. We ended up being able to get accounting on $20 million of contracts of programs that include, the ideas of critical race theory, like and all their buzzwords. They're using all sorts of, cover stories like anti-racism, culturally responsive teaching, cultural pedagogy, all these fancy words, but it ends up becoming racism. But that's what it ends up boiling down to, racism and bigotry. And they started having affinity groups where they were literally segregating children by race. My beliefs as a Muslim feminist are ones that are aligned with liberal politics, right? But I am a classic liberal, and I refuse this politics of wokeism. People want to blame the right, but really there's this extreme left that is occurring. And as you know, it's happening in the UK, it's happening through Europe. And I just want to just make one point that's really important that kind of connects my intersectionality. The Islamists that are on the streets in the mosques in the UK and in the United States and in France, they are using critical race theory to racialize Muslims. And a lot of people will know how a lot of the Muslim extremists have used this smear of Islamophobia to shut people down when we talk about the very real issues of Islamic extremism. They are using this in order to have a cover for themselves. And this is something that we have to widen as we look at the real challenges and why we have to stand up, as you all are and your community does, and and leave the herd, because the herd mentality is going to be the death knell of the values that we believe so strongly in related to free expression
the people cursed his name, bowed at the altar of the Father of lies. There's a number to their days and all their evil ways. The Lord's gonna turn away from all their cries. Oh, revelation, I can feel it coming like a dark train running.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Today is December 22nd, 2024. December 22nd, and a date that lives in infamy in my family. It is the birthday of my twin beautiful daughters today. They are turning 20 years old, and I couldn't be more proud as a father and as a family to have them in my lives. It's the most important day. I really just do not remember life without my twin daughters. I want to thank them for everything that they're becoming and have become as they spread their wings. They're in college, they're doing very well. They're going to find their place in life. They are going to spread their wings and fly as high as they can. And that's what it's all about to me. It's all about family. And if you're watching this podcast, you understand that I've been fighting against the wrongs being done to our children in education since about 2020, when my daughter came home after getting one of those surveys and says, "Dad, they asked me in school today, who flies an American flag at their house." And I told her, I said, "Sarah, I'm sure you told them that it's none of their business." And she did. But she said, "Dad, they went on to say that it's racist." And faster than you could say racism, I was in that school correcting the issue. Never happened again. It was a rogue teacher. I don't believe they're teaching anymore. And I don't think they should be teaching. But talking about Asra Nomani, so she wrote this book several years ago called Woke Army. You have to pick it up if you want to understand what's going on in schools, colleges, and across our country with the radicalization of our schools, diversity, equity, inclusion, CRT, critical race theory, anti-racism. You ask an educator in New Jersey, do you do CRT? They act like they don't know what it is. They know exactly what it is. It all started when you read Asra's book back in the mid to late 80s. And it was at Cal Berkeley, actually, where all this started. And that's why Cal Berkeley is such a hotbed for these things. That's why you see the protests that go on. They're sort of the first beacon that you can see going off and a big red flag on different social topics and issues. And during that time at Cal Berkeley in the late 80s, about 85 to 87, you had a man come there named Haytham Barzan. He started and helped start the Council for American Islamic Relations. It's basically formed by the Muslim Brotherhood, which started in the late 40s to spread Islam across the world. And they're totally 100% anti-Israel, of course. They hate Jews, but really they hate Western America. They hate all Western countries. That's why they're going in and really overrunning through immigration into Germany, France, England. Some of these places are becoming uninhabitable. If you look at what happened just the other day, a plot was thwarted in New York City where there was somebody that was going to do a bombing of the Israeli embassy to the United Nations in New York. And that person is a radical Islamist that was trained a whole bunch of radical ideas in Northern Virginia. And that's where the hotbed for Islamists started at 500 Grove Street in Herndon, Virginia. And there's all sorts of documentations and dots connected in this book. So you had Haytham Barzan there in Cal Berkeley. And at the same time, you had Kimberly Crenshaw there. She was the orchestrator, the designer, the author of critical race theory. So you had that going on at the same time. So that's where these alliances started to form. And then you had a woman named Judith Baker, also at Cal Berkeley at the same time. She's an anti-Israel Jew, the worst type, actually, in my opinion. I just don't get it. There are people that don't believe in being Zionist. A Zionist is somebody that believes that the state of Israel has a right to exist for the Jewish homeland. And it does. It goes back to biblical times. There is a history of Israel that one can easily look up online. But she's anti-Israel, and she is one of the originators of the LGBTQ movement as far as being a political movement, also at Cal Berkeley. And then you had the fourth star there, Linda Sarsour. She is the lady that did the Million Woman March, Pink Taco. She's a feminist and activist. She is also Palestinian, and she hates Israel and she hates America. She's an orchestrator of all sorts of issues across the land. And she goes out to these protests, helps organize them. She's got more people on her speed dial than you could possibly imagine. A bunch of crazy lunatic activists. So when we take the culmination of these four people that were at Cal Berkeley in the 80s, that's where this unholy alliance, as Asra Rahmani describes, really began. And it's really the connection between the radical left and the radical left Islamists. When I say the word Islamist, I don't mean a Muslim, someone who wants to practice her religion, pray to Allah and Islam. That's somebody that should and does enjoy the freedoms that this country offers to practice whatever religion that you see fit. I'm talking about people that are Islamists with an IST. You might hear the word Zionist, somebody that wants Israel to exist, but that's existing in Israel. It's another country. But Islamists, they want everyone here in America and in any country where they exist to live by the rule of law. It's called Sharia law and Sharia supremacy, which means that the Sharia law actually supersedes American law. It's just a conflict between the Constitution of the United States that's based on the Judeo-Christian values of the West, and of course on the Old and New Testament. So therein lies a huge problem, and one of the reasons why you have to be very cautious of what your children are being indoctrinated into, because education systems are indoctrination camps. That's what they are. That's what they were always designed to do. It's the information that being provided that's the problem. And really, educators, their main purpose is to teach our children how to think. It's not what to think. A parent is supposed to direct their child's upbringing and education based on what they think, based on the values, virtues, and beliefs of that family. And that's being taken away from the parent on a daily basis in the public school system. It's dangerous. We're seeing more violence in schools. I mean, I will tell you the truth. As a person that grew up in a family of educators, my family knows, and I say it out loud, my future grandchildren, when I have them, will never step foot in a public school. I mean, would you want your kid playing in the sandbox with most of these other kids these days? There's a lot of hate, a lot of confusion. The number of kids on psychiatric drugs has skyrocketed, and it's causing problems. But really, what causes problems is the cultural Marxist ideals that are being perpetrated and promulgated by the public education system. And I'm here to connect dots, like Asra says. It's the best, most powerful words that she uses, connecting dots, because anyone can sit here and spew information and they could be making things up, but you have to have the receipts. You have to be able to show people credible information so they can make informed decisions on how to deal with these situations. The way to deal with the situation right now, honestly, is to pull your kids from public school. They're only going online and getting a bunch of curriculum. You could do the same thing yourself. You have to find ways to do it. If you're not able to do that, you need to unindoctrinate your kids when they're home. You need to spend the time with them. It's no longer acceptable. It hasn't been for a long time just to buy your kids lunch and some nice clothes and say off to school you go and let that school district raise your child, because it's not going well for the families that are doing that. Those are the families, and some of which, their kids are coming home and saying, hey, I know my name's Jimmy, but I think my name's Jane, and I've been in the wrong body my whole life. Gender dysphoria is being promulgated like it's never been before. It's 0.002% maybe of the population that suffers from such a ailment. And it is a mental issue. I mean, basically there's two sexes, right? Male and female. There's really no such thing as gender. Gender is a socially constructed idea that basically has your mind identify with your sex and what that is. And then, of course, there's unlimited personalities. And I'm a believer you should accept everybody's personality. You shouldn't persecute them. You shouldn't disparage them or discriminate against anybody for any reason. Those are the things that I was taught as a child in a Jewish religious household that believes in the Judeo-Christian values. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not lie. All those things are important to me because one of the first things I was taught as a child is Genesis, paragraph 1, verse 1. And that is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I always knew that there was a God, an omnipresent God, at a different level of spirituality and being than humans. And that humans owe everything on this earth to the greatness of God. And without those values being instilled, you're really not going to know that information. And so, speaking of the values being instilled, we have the NJEA, the New Jersey Education Association. They have totally overstepped their bounds and boundaries. They are promoting the CRT, anti-racism. They're separating our children into small subgroups: Black, white, Asian, Latino, LGBTQ, etc. That is a communist mentality of dividing people into groups, group thought, group logic, oppressor versus the oppressed. And that is where the radical left identifies directly with the radical Islamists. As you know, they came up with this word, Islamophobia. If you don't know the history of that word, it was really invented after September 11th, when, according to Ilhan Omar, some people did something. They knocked down the buildings in New York City. They tried to totally destabilize the United States of America, killed more people on United States ground than ever before. And really, their goal ultimately is death to America, death to Israel, death to Jews, and death to America. That is the ultimate agenda. And that's what's being pushed in the public schools. How do I know that? We're going to take a look at a video next of what was going on at the NJEA convention just a few weeks ago, where they had an Islamist group through the Council of Islamic Relations, American Islamic Relations, and all their offshoots that we're going to talk about later on in this broadcast. But let's take a look here, because in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where there's a very high, dense population of both Jews and Muslims, the Township Committee has chosen on December 30th to make a proclamation that the month of January is going to be Muslim Heritage Month. And, I've talked to a few different people about this at the Jewish Federation, and I'm told that basically having these months of heritage are normal. And when I heard that, I said, no, it's not normal. It's been normalized, Indigenous People Months, Pride Month, Jewish Heritage Month, Black History Month, and now Muslim Heritage Month. We don't need months to celebrate our diversity, okay? Actually, we should be celebrating our commonality, which is that we all live under the same flag. My friend Rick Short just mentioned to me on a chat, to make sure that I mention the Rutgers report of DEI and how DEI is causing all sorts of issues and infighting between our youth in our public schools. It's available online. It's called the Rutgers Report of DEI, and it clearly states what we all know, is that things are going in the wrong direction and they need to be turned around. The problem is we live in New Jersey, which is a very blue state right now. We have a governor, state legislature, and a state senate that passes crazy bills and policies. In fact, the New Jersey Department of Education also proclaimed the month of January as Muslim Heritage Month. And that means that they're going to be inviting people into the schools with new curriculum to start educating children on Muslim heritage. Now, based on what I've seen from a radical imam in Cherry Hill, who is the imam of the mosque there, I don't want children being indoctrinated or shown these types of values. So let's take a look at what's going on at the NJEA convention, and then we're going to take a look at what's going on in the mosque in Cherry Hill. And then I need everyone to take an action from this. Okay, we need to be calling the Cherry Hill mayor and say that we don't feel that there should be a proclamation if this is what's going to be taught and spewed in our schools and to our youth. Take a look.
I want to welcome all of you to the NJA convention, which is the largest education and professional development convention in the nation.
ICNA and Why Islam are honored to be part of this year's Teachers Convention, with a prime booth offering Islamic literature and our Teacher's Guide to Understanding Islam and Muslims. By Allah's mercy, our efforts are making a real difference. This year, Masha Allah, we even had 4 shahadas at the convention.
I testify there is no one worthy of worship except Allah the Creator. And I testify Muhammad is the messenger and servant of Allah.
Join us in this journey. Support our mission to bring awareness of Islam to schools across the country.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Simkin. It's come to my attention that the New Jersey Department of Education has declared the month of January each year New Jersey Muslim Heritage Month. They provide a lot of insight and information so that teachers and educators can get information on how to include the Muslim community in the educational curriculum that our students are exposed to. On December 30th this month, on the second night of Hanukkah, the Muslim Heritage Month proclamation will be made by Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And this came from the website of GCLEA. It's the local mosque in Cherry Hill. And they are a part of the Council for American Islamic Relations. It's basically an anti-Semitic organization started by the Muslim Brotherhood out of Egypt in the late 60s and early 70s. I took a few minutes just to take a look at some of the About Us information on their website, as well as the staff. John Starling is the executive director. He's been there since 2011, and this mosque opened in 2010. John is the imam at this mosque. And next you're going to see some of his teachings about post-October 7th in Israel.
Brothers and sisters, something very ironic about this whole situation. Something extremely ironic. Before our very eyes, we've been watching a community go from being the victim to the victimizer. And people who were run out of their homes have run people out of their homes. And people who were once held in concentration camps have created a concentration camp in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories. And people who were once lined up and shot one family at a time because of their ethnicity, they have lined up and shot families because of their ethnicity. People who were subject to genocide have become the perpetrators of a Holocaust against the Palestinian people. And I'm not dramatizing this situation. I'm not inflating facts. This is what we need to be doing next. While we're grieving, unfortunately, we don't have the time to wait. The time is right now. We need to be sharing the truth with our fellow Americans, the truth of these atrocities, these crimes against humanity that have been committed under our nation's watchful eye. Brothers and sisters, you should notice that the narrative, it is shifting. People are taking note of the atrocities, of the crimes, of the genocide, of the occupation. People are beginning to take note of that. The narrative is shifting. Brothers and sisters, we are now seeing major news outlets apologize for misinformation. They're having to apologize for misinformation, and we're seeing politicians forced to walk their stories back because we can no longer be duped. We are approaching a tipping point, but we have to reach the summit before momentum will build and it will blow the thing wide open. We have to reach that summit, and our role here, right now, in this fight, it's not with guns and ammunition, but it's with information. Our role here is not inflicting bumps and bruises that will heal in a day or two, but changing policy and seeing to long-lasting change.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה, לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון, הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. במקביל הוריתי לבצע גיוס מילואים נרחב ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע כמותו. אני קורא בינתיים לכל אזרחי ישראל להישמע בקפדנות להנחיות הצבא, להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה. כל עוד בלבב ונימה נפש יהודי הומיה נפת אל מזרח קדימה אי לציון
So that video represents what's happening in Israel right now, but it's really not solely a Jewish issue. And by the way, when people talk about anti-Semitism, the International Holocaust Remembrance Organization has a definition of anti-Semitism, which they're calling on municipalities to enact and to recognize as the definitions, so that some of the rhetoric being spoken by that radical imam in Cherry Hill would be considered hate speech. Truthfully, I believe that sending stronger worded letters as an influence fails to complete the task or mission that we're looking to accomplish as activists. The one thing that I do know works is really burning down the phone lines of legislators and decision makers. And that's what people need to do. If you're unhappy with the things that I'm showing you that are happening in the Cherry Hill school district, you need to make phone calls to the superintendent. I think his last name's Morton. I don't have children in that district, nor do I maintain an active role, although I do pay attention to what's going on there because it's pretty radical. There's been a lot of anti-Semitism in that school because there is a dense population of both Jews and Muslims. And unfortunately, some of the Muslim students and even not Muslim students are being talked to about conversion and things of that nature. They're getting a big dose of anti-Semitism radicalization from the very place that's supposed to be teaching them, about the godly interactions in the public domain. It's really a shame. And speaking of which, we're coming up on a date in history where Auschwitz, the concentration camp, was liberated. And Benjamin Netanyahu wants to go there in Poland, but he can't because the ICC, the International Criminal Court, which is the judicial branch of the United Nations, which is really the United Nations against Westernization, if you really think about it. All these European nations, they weren't founded on capitalism. They are running a different sort of democratic democracy that we run here in the United States of America, which is a constitutional republic. But speaking of Auschwitz, I'd like to share a short story. This week I had the pleasure of going to a Chabad house. Chabad is a organization of very religious Jews, started back in the 1700s. And a man came to the United States in the 1940s. His name is the Rebbe. And he started this movement to make sure that Jewry wouldn't end after World War II, and an outreach program to develop all these Chabad houses. They're basically a place of worship, a cultural center for Jews all over the world. There's over 3,000 now. This man did more for Judaism than just about anybody else in human history, and certainly recent human history. But one of his disciples was there, Rabbi Mengel. And there's another rabbi, his son, that is the Chabad leader at the Chabad house in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. But his father is also a rabbi, and he's a Holocaust survivor. He was in Auschwitz at the age of 10 years old, if you can imagine. He was one of the only children that was housed in Auschwitz. And when they went to Auschwitz, it was chosen based on your skills or ability. You were either going to a work camp or you're going to the gas chamber. Those were the two options. And he and his father, again, him being 10 years old, were sent to the work camps. So they were not killed at that time. And what you had to do when you came to Auschwitz and you're getting ready to go to the work camp is you had to take off all your clothes down to being naked, go into a shower where they would shower you. They would spray you with different chemicals to keep bugs and louses away from you. Very dehumanizing. It was horrible. But this was a 10-year-old child, and he gets out from the actual shower section, and the guards are saying, "Hey, you need to put on your uniform. Put on your uniform." And he says, "I can't. I'm a child. I'm only 10 years old. I'm going to be walking and working. I can't put on the pants. I can't wear the shirts. I won't be able to move. These weren't, made out of cashmere either, very stiff, rigid materials. And so the guard was finally convinced to allow this child to go back to the mountain of clothing that was taken from all the people that were going to be marched to the labor camps. And they told him to go find your pants and your shirt and go put them on. You're right. We don't have anything for children to wear of your size. And so he goes and he finds his pants and his shirt, he puts them on, and right underneath his pants were his father's pants that he recognized. And something told him in his mind, I just want to see what's in the pockets. What did my father bring? What do we have with us when we came here, just to know? And in one pocket, he pulled out a sardine, a fish. People were starving then. That fish could have went a long way. And in the other pocket was a miniature pair of tefillin. And if you're not Jewish, or even if you are and you don't know what tefillin are, they're small box, one that you wear on your head and one on your left arm. And the concept is to connect your head and your heart. Since your heart's on your left side, this other box goes right on your left arm with prayers inside, calling for God to watch over us. And then you say certain prayers while wearing the tefillin. And they're a source of inspiration, of light in a place that was very dark. As a matter of fact, something that the Lubavitch say is that where there is light, darkness cannot exist. And so this young boy, 10 years old, he takes the tefillin out of his father's pocket under a small piece of cloth. And they're miniature, miniature, very small. And he puts them in his pocket and he brings them back to the barracks where his father was waiting for his arrival, praying that he would get there safely. Because, people were just shot if you didn't directly obey an order. And he came back and he shows his father what he brought back with him. And his father almost fell over. It was just an amazing occurrence that here they're in this horrible place where they're being persecuted, where there's true genocide happening, people being killed because they're Jews. And he shows his father. And now in that barracks, there's a set of tefillin, and all the people that were in those barracks, they never stopped believing in God, even though they were there because of the God they believed in. They never stopped believing in God. And that story just resonated with me, just as an artifact, something that you can bring with you to maintain your spirit through such difficult times. This young man, then, he was also on the death march, where they would march, let's say from here to Florida, basically, in the dead winter. And he survived that, and became a rabbi and spreads the word of God all over the world. And it's truly amazing that Judaism has been able to exist. It's no surprise and it's no coincidence. It's been designed that way because we were the chosen people. But I'm not here to proselytize and only talk about Judaism. I'm talking about Americanism. The very same people that want to destroy Jews, they want us to destroy America. That's why they chant death to America. That's why the Twin Towers came down. That's why the USS Cole was destroyed. That's why there's all these pressures. They do not like America. They want to live by the law that they believe in, the law under Allah, under Sharia Suprema, which is totally different than the legal base that we have now, because our whole legal base in America and our structure, our founding documents and doctrines are all founded on the Judeo-Christian values of the West. And what's happening now in public schools is just the opposite of that. They wanted to originally hurt us with economics. That's what Marxism really is. It's an economic structure. It's basically socialist, communist, state-owned everything. You're the property of the state. Everyone gets the same amount of money regardless of what they do. True socialism. It's not what America is all about. But that's what your children are being taught to expect from America. And that is why you need to pull your kids. Okay. It's an unsafe situation, just from the violence, from the other kids that are going through these distorted pieces of information that they're being told and educated upon. It's not good for the sanctity of life. It's just not. I mean, look at the kids fighting and the violence and the hatred. It's just getting worse and worse. There's not a day that goes by where you don't turn on the news and see, like we saw yesterday, Christians, Catholics being persecuted by a man that over in Germany at a Christmas mall where the man plowed over 80, 90 people, killed 10, 11 people. I mean, that's horrific, but it happens every day. School shootings occurring, all that hate building up to want to kill your fellow schoolmates and classmates. I mean, I've never even imagined that would be in this place. And really, it's just not safe any longer. You know, I mean, DEI is the end of things, diversity, equity, inclusion. They are making this Muslim Heritage Month under the guise of inclusion, so that we're including everybody. How about we include everybody in an assembly, right? Assemble. Let's not disassemble people. Let's not separate people into groups. These things need to change. President Trump definitely has ideas and things are going to happen, but this ship is going to take a while to turn around and get going in the right direction. Until then, I will tell you, I don't think it's a safe place for your children. You really need to evaluate things. If you are going to keep your kids in public schools, you need to do a lot to communicate with your children. You should be telling your children before they go to the school in the morning what they should be thinking about as they're being taught important information. The real problem is that so much of the time and money and effort is being spent on diversity, equity, inclusion. It's probably about 25 to 30% of the time, money, and effort being spent on our student population. And it's all going in the wrong direction. How come everyone doesn't see it? It's so glaringly obvious to me and to anybody with a brain or common sense, but yet we're allowing it to occur. How do you solve these things? You start making phone calls to your school district. You get a hold of their phone numbers, their email addresses. They can't ignore you. You know, go to a school board meeting. You know, I go to school board meetings, but they're not listening to me because I don't have a child in that school anymore. All right. And I'm very thankful I don't. But if I did, believe me, they'd be sorry that I did, because I would be so far up their asses with this information and stopping it, they wouldn't know what to do. We need to come together as one large community and say, we want to go back to classical education, teach our children how to be productive members of society. Okay. And stop telling our kids what to think. I'll tell my kids what to think about while you're educating them on important subjects like geography, like math, like science, like reading, like English, right? Those are the things that teachers and schools should be teaching our children. Just because they say, well, this is all out there in the public domain, so we have to teach about it. That's a bunch of bullshit. Okay, there's everything. You can teach. What are you going to teach your kids? How to cook heroin and crack so you can smoke it properly? That's all out there. I mean, is there a crack 101 class? No, we don't need all these crazy classes. Okay, where did that person, listen, even that imam at that mosque, he was radicalized in college. He's a convert. He converted to Islam at the age of 19 because he was going to college. You have to be real careful with what your kids are learning about, who they're associating with at these colleges when you send your kid out there. I know I do. I pay very close attention. I want to know who, what, where, when, why. Okay, because you never stop being a parent. I'm not a hovering parent. I know what my kids are up to, though, and they know that if they want to continue living a good life based on what we're providing for them, they need to follow our set of rules to comply with the set of rules that we created, not some government agency that they created, because they don't know what's best for our children, even though they think they do. I'd like to flip the video back to Asra Nomani as she talks about really the connection between the radical left and Islamists. We cannot allow for the Islamization in our public schools. It's the same thing as radicalizing them with DEI, with CRT, anti-racism, radical gender and sex and sexuality theory, things that are inappropriate for children to be learning. When it's appropriate for children to be learning them, they could send you that information home in a sealed envelope in a backpack, and you can decide how you want to do it. These are things that you should be promoting and pushing for in your public school curriculum. Here's Asra Nomani back again about connecting some more dots for us.
Asra Nomani, a former Wall Street Journal reporter, in 2002, while she was in Pakistan investigating Islamic ideology behind the 9/11 attacks, her colleague, Daniel Pearl, was kidnapped by ISIS terrorists and then beheaded. Asra is also the author of Woke Army, the Red-Green Alliance, Destroying America's Freedom, which exposes the anti-Jewish network in America. She's also a senior fellow in the practice of journalism at the Independent Women's Network. Asra, welcome.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm just so happy to have this conversation with you because we need to understand how we got here. Muslim organizations that have now embedded themselves in the West, and they are the ones unleashing these protesters against Israel and Jews onto the streets and into the campuses. What I have seen now from Constitution Avenue to Pennsylvania Avenue should scare everyone. Along Constitution Avenue, American Muslims for Palestine, one of these many organizations, organized a march. Thousands waltzed down Constitution Avenue, past the Smithsonian Museum. And there I asked each one of them, from the Council on American Islamic Relations to the titans of the far left in the United States named Code Pink, do you condemn Hamas? Do you support the existence of the state of Israel? And they refused to answer. And Cindy, who did I see as the field marshal directing this march? None other than Linda Sarsour, the organizer of the Women's March, that in 2017 refused to accept feminists from Israel, calling them colonizers and settler colonialists. You know, this language that has been used to dehumanize Jews and the people of Israel. And so I speak to them, and they are refusing to accept the humanity of Jewish people or Israelis because they have decided that this is the moment that they will seize to destroy the state of Israel and eliminate Jews from the river to the sea.
But how do they bring together this alliance of these leftist groups that, you've seen the signs, Queers for Palestine, which obviously makes no sense. You wouldn't get very far holding that sign in Gaza. So how is it that they've fused these things together in a way that makes sense to the people who are actually on the streets?
Oh my gosh, this is my book, right? Woke Army. It was a shocking cover for me to even see this nexus between the far left and the Islamists, destroying America's freedom. But Cindy, it is as if the people, the characters from the book have now leapt onto the streets of our nation and our world. And how did they do it? Let me give you a couple examples. So this is one of the actual posters last Saturday. I picked it up, journalist trick, you know this, you wait till everybody leaves and you pick up their trash and you get the signs, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. But what was the chant that they said in Arabic? Philistine al-Arabiya, which means Palestine is Arab, from the river to the sea. So they have code. And who organized this one? The Islamist groups, U.S. Palestinian Community Network, one of the many Islamist groups that believe in political Islam. And who have they aligned with then? This is what's so critical. You have to see the fine print, as you know, as a journalist. Stand with Palestine, end the occupation, right? They use these big words. Who is it that sponsored this? The Party for Socialism and Liberation. Socialism and liberation. That's the far left. And who are they? Multi-million-dollar global networks that are trying to infuse the socialist far left agenda into our nations. They are aligned then. Look at this one. We're going to break the fourth wall here. Workers' World Party, the far left communist organization. And so, but it is in fact exactly what's happening in the streets of our Western capitals, our cities, our colleges, and it is a multi-million-dollar network of organizations that are unleashing these street warriors of the woke army against America, the West, and Israel and Jews.
One of the things that has astounded me by what we've seen, not only is everybody out on the streets in lockstep, but they're doing the exact same things, right? They're holding the same signs, ripping down the pictures of the hostages wherever they find them. Is this messaging that's going out, or what's your explanation for how they've proceeded so identically?
Yeah, Cindy, talking points. They share Google Docs, and in the Google Doc, they have the talking points. Why are the chants all the same? Because they have created digital toolkits, which is what every grassroots organization has, right? And what are they basing all of this on? I want to just connect the dots for everyone. For several years now, we have heard about this concept of critical race theory, right? This ideology that has infused our schools. And what they have done is they are using the talking points of the oppression matrix, the privilege bingo that our poor children have had to experience in our school systems, so that now it's an upside down world in which Jews are the occupiers, the colonists, and the aggressors, there's no mention of them as victims, as happened in the October 7th attacks. This woke army turned their target now upon the Democrats and Joe Biden. And that unholy alliance that the Democrats had established with the Islamists and the far left is now coming home to roost. That's what they did, is they took the same image, and that this is the moral inversion. This has happened so many times now in the media. Images from the Holocaust and Syria are being used as images from Gaza. And what do you have at the bottom? The QR code. That tells you that this is part of that established multi-million-dollar campaign against Israel to destroy the state of Israel and the people that live there.
So wrote the prophet John before his days were done. The king is coming and it won't be long.
And like I said, this isn't about Israel. It's not just about Jews. This is about being anti-Semitic, yes, but these people are anti-American. And that's really what's going on. These educators have us by the short hairs. It's got to stop. The only way it's going to stop is for you to become a force multiplier, talking to your friends, talking to your family. Start by talking to your children, okay? Making sure they understand the values, virtues, and beliefs that are in your household so that nobody comes along and talks them out of it and going with a different ideology, because that is what's in play right now. These people are trying to take the minds, the bodies, and the souls of your children. It's a fact. Look at the LGBTQIA plus movement. Why do schools possibly have a policy that allows the school to keep secrets from parents when your child wants to do a social gender transition? And you call your kid John when they leave school and they're going to school and say, no, my name's Joan. They're starting a whole new file on your kid. They don't have to tell you. Heaven forbid your kid has a falling out, a problem, some sort of injury, or wants to hurt themselves, and you don't even know about it as a parent. That's the problem. These schools think that it's okay to raise your children, and not only to raise them, but raise them away from the values, virtues, and beliefs that your family holds sacred. They are trying to bring spirituality back into schools, by the way. There's a consortium for that through the Rockefeller Foundation, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, and the like, where they're trying to bring spirituality back because they do understand that spirituality helps children learn. The problem is they're doing it without a God. And when you do things without a God, you don't have that moral compass. I learned some other things this week through my religious studies that really, again, when it comes to an education, if a child from a very young age does not understand the first verse of Genesis, and that was that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God created the heavens and the earth. If you don't know that, you're not going to know that what's yours is yours. In other words, thou shalt not steal. You're not going to know thou shalt not lie, because all those laws that we live by are predicated on the fact that God created the heavens and the earth. That is a fact. That's what the Judeo-Christian values of the West are. That's what this country was founded upon. That's what our founding documents. And if you know me, you know that I always carry a pocket constitution. It's got the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the first 10 amendments, which was called the Bill of Rights. By the way, last weekend was Bill of Rights Day. In 1791, the Bill of Rights was ratified, and that was a celebration last week. And I celebrate every day. Every time I'm not sure that I'm on the right side of things, I look at those amendments and I look to make sure that my rights are not being infringed. And usually when I have to look at it, they are. And I've got a problem with that. What do? I go and download an app called Bill Blaster, BILLBLASTER. It's got the name and phone number of every single legislator in Congress and Senate. And I've been using it a lot lately, even though I'm not a constituent in some of these states where they're talking about not ratifying or not putting in the people in government that Donald J. Trump chose to insert in our government to lead it in his cabinet. You know, I call them and I tell them as a constituent of the United States of America that I'm in full support of the mandate that President Donald J. Trump has gotten by winning the popular vote and the trifecta. His massive win, winning all the swing states 7-0, Senate, Congress, and again, the popular vote. We want who we want. We want who he wants, and we want things run properly so we can turn this ship around. Right now, we got a locomotive traveling at 1,000 miles per hour with 1 million cars on it. It's going to take time to slow down. It's going to take time for us to see the actual changes, but it all starts on January 3rd when Congress is sworn in. We may very well be getting a new Speaker of the House, because the one we have has had totally no balls whatsoever He's letting the radical left walk all over and make demands upon us when we have a majority, and we need to oppose that tooth and nail. And this is what Donald J. Trump talks about when he talks about what he's going to do about anti-Semitism in our schools.
Here's what I will do to defeat anti-Semitism and defend our Jewish citizens in America. My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support. Truth is, you don't have to do much after that. When you do that, it's going to work miracles. Please sit down. We will not subsidize the creation of terrorist sympathizers, and we're not going to do it certainly on American soil. We're not going to do it anywhere. Next, I will inform every educational institution in our land that if they permit violence, harassment, or threats against Jewish students, the schools will be held accountable for violations of the civil rights law. Very important. Jewish Americans must have equal protection under the law. They're going to get it.
That's right. We should all have protection under the law because that's what we deserve, not just as Jews, but as American citizens. We cannot let people come and tread on our rights like they've been doing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Israel because Israel really is the only partner, the true partner that America has in the Middle East. And why it's always been important is because there's a bunch of crazy lunatics that are running things over there. Look what just happened in Syria. Okay. At the same time, Israel was found in 1948. Iraq was also founded, and after in 1948, when Israel was made the state, the Jewish state, almost immediately there was a rebellion from the Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, and they all came after Israel just about right after that proclamation was made to make Israel the Jewish state. But there had already been 600,000 Jews that had immigrated there from around 1900 till that point. And they didn't just move into everybody's territory either. We bought a lot of that land, and the land that was given to the Jews to make the home state was mostly public lands that was undeveloped and no one was doing anything with it. They didn't have such a thing as a GDP. It was basically a bunch of shepherds and people living as nomads in the desert. And Jews came, they were called pioneers, and they built up a country. A lot of them were socialists. They came from communist countries, the Jews there. So we're not talking about radical right people here. We're talking about left-leaning Jews that started the state of Israel. We called them pioneers at the time, and there's plenty of money flowing to support the building of an Israeli nation. People in America, the Rothschild families, wealthy Jewish families were kicking in a lot of money to make sure that we had a home state. We were living in a diaspora for 2,000 years after the Romans conquered Israel. So I was talking about Chabad and their outreach. And as of right now, the Biden administration is threatening Israel to cut off aid and weapons because these victims over here, the Palestinian victims that claim all this victimhood and oppression and say that the Jews are creating concentration camp for the Palestinian people and all these things, all this rhetoric that's going on. This is back in the 80s. This man had a brilliant way of dealing with things and understanding of the worldview, geopolitics, and all those things. And he's called the Rebbe of the Chabad Lubavitch. He was the seventh Rebbe, I believe, that existed in that movement. And this is going to show you what had been going on in Israel for the 6 Day War and throughout modern history, and his views on how we can handle dealing with America, with this diplomacy, the United Nations, etc. And here comes the Rebbe. Bear with me.
Sitzungen hat nicht gemacht in der jüdischen Komitetten, hat nicht gemacht in Kliere, Scheno, Schnee und Schlischis, nur die, was einen Mumche behinern sehr, wie man darf sich fühlen in Zoffen von Eretz Yisroel und von dort bis Michus Litzfeno von Eretz Yisroel, und hat das Machlit gewähnt und auch getan, und kein Pissum und fragen Deis, bei 120, was zwischen sie gefunden sich Hechet Netzlim und Muschlomim und Neche die, was finden sich, wie man sagt, sie auch von Zoffen, von Moskau, wie Kajese Base, und hat Machlit gewähnt, und gefragt nach Wissende Kassayinen von Pikuach Nefesh, und hat das gleich auch getan und es hat Matzlier gewesen, als Tippel allein im Mosser Facher. Mit der alle Zeus, was ich davon gewesen, und es hat sich herausgewiesen, dass der Weg a vermeiden Milchomes, wie man sagt, so schön nicht der Begolo, ja, das der Weg, was sie mit vermeiden, auf weiter und nicht vermieten die Milchomes, was man mehr gehabt hat, Pläne zu heranmischen, und der zu heranmischen hat gesehen, a Beshiva Drochim Yonussele von Echo, und so hat sich auch getan, der Ingen bis man kurzer Belisse, und halbweit der Mamscher sein besehen an Neffen von on Pirsen, aber bejachat im Sehen meiste Befehl bis dieses Achig Dele und der Ihnen beschlemusse, nicht gehen a Zadechot Leponi und danach schicken Schluchen bechol Hoelem Kule. Wo sagt der, was ist in Derby in Washington und wo sagt der, was ist in Moskau und der, was ist in London und der, was ist in Paris. Wie kann jeder besetzt, sie mögen gehen, als Schenitze nicht. Hat auch gegolten, aber sich nicht mit Jascher gewöhnt, mit Ma Jemer hat Bries. Ein Bruder, ein was man sich überzeigt, die Muroi. Wie gesagt, früher war 3 Mal nacheinander, noch getan denselben Teil. Und es hat gekostet Hunderte, Rachmanel, Zlam, Tausende. Korbonis, hohe Lissie, mit so das Rachmochaswe Scholem, überchasen denselben Teus noch einmal, und wie hier rotzen, aber soll nicht voll werden. Für die Jiden, was sie seine Jahre, Veracha, Bewo mit Zazibis, Schenis und Mischunis, a viele ihm Kavanos und Rizuyo. Und soll Reis nehmen, Schulchen, Norach, Eirach, Chai. Und guckt und dort den Dien. Statik mit Reit. Und mir sagt, Bidworim Gdelim, oder Bidworim Ktanim, Bekolponen, Bekela, Nes, Chalusha. Aber wir wird machen a Yishu, und wir wird sich besetzen, und wir wird vergessen, und wir wird stehen, mit der Bechelet Nefesh auf Megi sein, und wir wird sich stellen, mit Deke Bechulu. Das hat Dibur, was hat Dibur, wissen Diplomaten, als hat Dibur in Schove Klum. Der einzige Weg, auf mit Wattel sein, dem Lachazis, ist Opton am Meise, was hat viele Asiden allein wollen Charoton, weil sie das nicht können tun, warum Sasami Meise, was wir können auf Drufkin Charoton nicht haben. Eiser, die Kasche, der Rebischer gesagt hat, ist gerade begeh Gott, na Lachas kamme begeh Gott. Und wir setzen, beine Bosser, man muss ankommen zu Seele Geld und zu Seele Neschek und Chulu. Ich im Duber kam vor mit Norgem, wird nicht sein Rachmonel Itzlan, auf was zu nützen, die Geld und die Neschek. Der einzige Weg war, sie zu haben, dem Geld und dem Neschek, und nicht noch geben, ich beschaß mich stellt sich beteke. Wie man hat gesehen, bis ist war die Kurdis, und was gestellt beteke, hat das nicht angeritten, dem Geben, dem Geld und dem Neschek, auf eine längere Zeit, mehr nicht, wie auf das Mann Kotzit, Kosmans er nicht gewähne Gebe, eine Geze Pikuach Nefesh. Viel mal noch anan, bei dem Maime du Matze, was gewähnt, die Punkt, a Kopie von dem Maime du Matze wisst. Allemal ist das nur in Welt in der Tor, hier öfter zusammen bei der Jode. Es muss ein Schinui. Denn der Kudas, wo Pnimis, wird Technoinen, derselbe Maime du Matze, dieselbe Menschen, was daten durchführen, die Schliche, dieselbe Menschen hat der Seele, Talmiden, was einem Afria, und dieselbe Teines. Das ist der Weg zu Scholem, und das ist der Weg zu Tzaddik V'Yeshe, und das wird man haben, Maschene, Mesen, Baum, Israel, und man darf sich rechnen, nicht, hey, Namla, wurde die ich gehe. Man muss ankommen zu Israel, V'Chulu.
Es ist in den United States, darf man beweisen, man ist stark, behadeyot, und behalten nicht, was sie noch gern niederfahren, sonst zu machen, das war was anderes, kann das nicht sein. Kommen ins Mann, aber es ist so, als sie sollen dann sagen, oder sie hilft von sehr Chai und sehr Kiel.
זה מה שהוא גם יעשה, מפני שזמנים לא קלים, התקופה לא קלה עכשיו, וצריך באמת הרבה...
אבל הפיסלום והמגה הגינאים זה הוא ההיפך ממה שעשו הדאטו, והדאטו אוחזו בהקל שצריך לבטל בלי משהו על עניינים מקריים, ובשביל זה יקבלו משהו, וזהו ההיפך של הטבע של ארצות הברית. ארצות הברית נסקיימה על ידי זה שעומדו חזק שמשהו חיוני בשבילו, אי אפשר בזה לבטא, בגדול. והיקר שאין זה מסים לפרטנר כדי ארצות הברית, זה היה מסים בפרטנרים אחרים, ונגיע לארצות הברית והגישה היחידה שהיא הצליחה. הדאטו שאין דין בתקף ומסבירים שאין זה עניין של הקשורת, שזה עניין חיוני, וזה הטבע של ארצות הברית, שארץ ישראל תהיה חזקה במידל איסט, במזרח התיכון, כמו שזהו השותף היחידי האמיתי של בן ברית.
Rebbe, I would like to, I came to see you, and he looked aside and he said, just to see, not to talk. And so we started talking, and we had a 45-minute conversation. The people who were waiting were very, very impatient, to put it mildly, but it was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Well, he said, you're going to this house of darkness, the UN, which was very, very unfriendly to Israel at the time. And he said, even in the greatest darkness, if you light a candle, it spreads a great light that can be seen from afar. And of course, he said to remember what I represent, who I represent, to stand firmly and proudly for Israel and the Jewish people.
When you're in a place of darkness, you can light a candle that can be seen from afar. Where there is light, darkness cannot exist. Words that resonate with me. Why do I play videos of the Rebbe? Well, first of all, I know it's tough to watch sometimes because it's in Yiddish, a language we don't speak, but the subtitles are there and the words have never resonated more true than they do today. And I would consider the Rebbe really to be the original OG podcaster, because that's what he was doing. And I and anyone else that's running a podcast and trying to spread the word can learn from great speakers, and he's much more than the great speaker. As a matter of fact, people considered him to be the Messiah. People actually go to his place of burial to shed prayer, hoping that he still answers those prayers and gives his blessing from the grave. And that being said, the difference there is that was diplomats and politicians, basically being rhinos, right? Republicans in name only back then. That's what we call them now. And we have things going on in our own government right now that need to change, that we need men and women of strength, not ones that are willing to kowtow, and bend the knee to the establishment. And that's what's going on. We have a governor's race coming up in New Jersey. The GOP establishment, they back typically rhinos and losers, people that are controlled opposition. We need to get away from that mentality of being controlled anything. We need to take control, not be controlled. And on that note, I am going to leave you with one final video that I put together about Matt Gaetz. As you know, Matt Gaetz withdrew his name from being Attorney General. He may not have been confirmed by the Senate. Maybe the Senate's not ready to confirm, somebody that can stand up and tell it like it is. But he's done a lot. I'm hoping that he comes to Congress on January 3rd because he was duly elected in his district. And he exposes all the people that have settled money in Congress for sexual assaults and things of that nature that have occurred. And really, I would back him and stump for him for Speaker of the House. I mean, I don't know if he can get the votes needed to become Speaker. I mean, I would hope he would under Trump, but this is a type of strength that we need. He is not corrupt. He has his own money. He's never taken money from political action committees. He owes nobody nothing, okay? His family has plenty of money. They stood by him through a lot of controversy. The fact is he was a young guy spending some money on women. He didn't sleep with somebody that was under the age of 18. That's a fact. All these things have come out. These are things that were done to smear and discredit him. So I want to thank everybody for spending some of their time with me on this Sunday. helping me celebrate the birthday of my twin daughter, Sarah and Ava. I love you. You're my everything. Really, the whole fabric of my being goes towards taking care of my family and the future of my family so that we can persevere and continue to spread our seed for countless generations to come under the same rules of law, values, virtues, and beliefs that we've all become accustomed. So thank you again for spending your time. God bless me. God bless you. God bless your families, your children, and God bless America. Thank you again.
Congressman Gates offered to take us on a tour.
So one of the committees where people have a lot of information is the Appropriations Committee, because they can view almost any vector of government funding. And so, this is Mr. Rutherford's office. He's on the Ethics Committee and the Appropriations Committee. 152 stock trades. Stocks go through the roof. And, actually bought Raytheon stock the day that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, imagine if every American could make money off of war.
Yeah, setting aside the whole shame and ethics questions. How many more on our hit list here?
There are a few more. I wish there were fewer on the hit list. I wish we could only stop at 1 or 2 offices, but as it turns out, energy is a sector that sees a lot of congressional stock trading.
Sure.
And we have members who are on the Energy Subcommittee of Appropriations, like Michael Guest, chairman of the Ethics Committee, and he's traded somewhere between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in energy stocks. He's been buying online gaming stocks and just making a killing on them. So you would think that the people that were on the Ethics Committee would be your best allies in this fight, but indeed they're some of the most prolific traders. And not only trading, but in the case of Mr. Guest, trading in an area where he has access to energy information more so than almost any other American.
And no indication that he wants to maybe slow down, pump the brakes, recognize that there might be some appearance of impropriety here?
It seems as though the pace is only accelerating.
All right.
Can't help but notice.
And so your question was whether or not we.
I control the time.
Your question.
You guys have been blowing a lot of calls
socialism.
lately on
the
matters of
no.
strategy, Mr. Secretary. You guys told us that Russia couldn't lose. You told us that the Taliban couldn't immediately win. And so I guess I'm wondering, what in the $773 billion that you're requesting today is going to help you make assessments that are accurate in the face of so many blown calls?
You've seen what's in our budget. You've seen how the budget matches the strategy, and so I'll let that speak for itself.
Well, I've also seen that we're behind, Mr. Secretary. We're behind in hypersonics. We failed to deter Russia. Last year,
so what do you mean we're behind in hypersonics? How do you?
Okay, who's ahead in hypersonics?
How do you make that assessment?
I don't know. I make that assessment because China is fielding hypersonic weapon systems, and we are still developing them. I make that assessment because Russia actually used one. By the way, your own people brief us that we are behind and that China is winning. Are you aware of the briefings we get on hypersonics?
I am certainly aware of briefings that we provide to Congress.
But it's not just the hypersonics. It's all over the world. It's in Taiwan, where China last year flew more sorties than ever before. It's North Korea, on pace to shatter prior records, the number of missiles that they are testing. And so while everyone else in the world seems to be developing capabilities and being more strategic, we got time to embrace critical race theory at West Point, to embrace socialism at the National Defense University, to do mandatory pronoun training. Do you assess?
It's again, this is the most capable, the most combat credible force in the world. It has been, and it will be so going forward.
Not if we continue down this path.
To do that.
Not if we embrace socialism.
The fact that you're embarrassed by your country.
No. I'm embarrassed by your leadership. I am not embarrassed for my country. I wish we were not losing to China.
I wish we were.
You know what? That is so disgraceful that you would sit here and conflate your failures with the failures of the uniformed service members. You guys said that Russia would overrun Ukraine in 36 days. You said that the Taliban would be kept at bay for months. You totally blew those calls. And maybe we would be better at them if the National Defense University actually worked a little more on strategy and a little less on wokeism.
Has it occurred to you that Russia has not overrun Ukraine because of what we've done and our allies have done?
But that was baked into your flawed assessment. That was baked into your flawed assessment. And so I saw that the Obama administration tried to destroy our military by starving it of resources, and it seems the Biden administration is trying to destroy our military by force-feeding it wokeism. I yield back. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms should be the name of a chain of convenience stores in Florida, not a federal agency. We need to abolish the ATF before they abolish our Second Amendment rights. I don't ascribe to the theory that we just have to surrender sending criminal referrals because somehow Merrick Garland will never prosecute them. For many of the crimes that we are observing, the statute of limitations is 5 years. And so we could send criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. We go take the White House back, and you never know, David, it may be an Attorney General Matt Gaetz down the road or someone of my liking who will be there to actually enforce the law and provide the accountability, not just the vision, but the actual accountability. The people that are sending you those messages deserve that in a free and just and constitutional republic.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. And I like that. I like that. Attorney General Matt Gaetz. Are you kidding me? Man.
The world is not ready, probably. Certainly Senate confirmation wouldn't be. But, you know,
well, we're getting
a
there.
boy can dream.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Here's Matt Gaetz versus Christopher Wray. This is one of the finest clips you'll see today. This guy understands that Christopher Wray, who hopefully will be leaving his job the minute Trump is sworn in, Matt Gaetz gets it. The FBI management has worked as a singular force to destroy liberties and freedoms in the United States, and they better get a guy in there who's willing to see it for what it is. This guy sees it. Watch this.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the
protecting
question
anyone
about whether or not
politically.
that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you. I think that the reason we are as involved in Ukraine as we are is because Afghanistan wound down. And if we still had Afghanistan to launder money through, there probably wouldn't be the need for this type of excessive involvement in Ukraine. But I think we can look at Afghanistan and we can look at what's going on here and say what a lot of these defense contractors are pushing toward is how to have an extended kind of low yield war. Like if there's a way to stretch this thing out, turn it into a 20, 30 year kind of thing where there's a whole lot of money moving around and unaccountable pots and a lot of weapons getting bought. And then, oh man, the stockpiles, well, we got to spend more money to reload those. I think that the reason we are as involved in Ukraine as we are is because Afghanistan wound down. And if we still had Afghanistan to launder money through, there probably wouldn't be the need for this type of excessive involvement in Ukraine.
The reason that Matt Gaetz is such an exciting pick to so many people is because he will go in and reform the Department of Justice. It desperately needs it. Look, he and I sat on the Judiciary Committee together for almost 7 years before I became Speaker of the House. And we heard the evidence. We saw the evidence of lawfare. We saw how the Department of Justice had been used for political purposes, how they targeted Catholics in some examples and parents at school boards and pro-life Americans. This is not what our system of justice was built to do, and Matt Gaetz will go in there and shake it up. And I think most of the American people understand that's an important function.
Because I'm the only Republican in Congress who deplatformed the corporate PACs before they could deplatform me. I don't take any PAC money, and I would invite my Republican colleagues to join me in that because it makes us more resilient.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, I hereby resign as a United States Representative for Florida's 1st Congressional District, effective immediately, and I do not intend to take the oath of office for the same office in the 119th Congress to pursue the position of Attorney General in the Trump administration. Signed sincerely, Matt Gaetz, Member of Congress.